Commander Zealeth stared at the holographic display floating above his command chair. The blue and green planet below looked peaceful and beautiful. White clouds moved slowly across its surface, and the commander could see large bodies of water that sparkled in the light of the system's yellow star. "Another water world," said his second officer, Lieutenant Kava. She was a tall, thin alien with 4 arms and bright purple skin. "The scans show it has life on it." Zealeth nodded. He had seen many worlds like this during his 30 years serving the Galactic Council. Most of them had simple life forms like plants and animals. Some had intelligent species, but they were usually very primitive. The Council's job was to find these worlds and decide what to do with them. "What level of development are they showing?" Zealeth asked. Kava checked her instruments. "The energy readings suggest they have discovered nuclear power. We can also see some basic spacecraft moving around their planet. I would say they are level 3 on the Council scale." Zealeth smiled. Level 3 civilizations were his favorite to work with. They were smart enough to understand the Council's technology, but not advanced enough to cause problems. The Council would offer them membership, give them some better technology, and add another peaceful species to their growing alliance. "Send out the standard first contact probe," Zealeth ordered. "Let them know we come in peace. Prepare the cultural exchange package for a level 3 species." The probe launched from their ship and began its journey toward the planet. It would take several hours to reach the surface, giving the aliens time to detect it and respond. Zealeth had done this many times before. The process was always the same. First, the primitive species would panic when they saw the probe. Then their leaders would gather and argue about what to do. Finally, they would send a simple radio message trying to communicate. The Council would respond with gifts of technology and knowledge. Within a few years, the new species would become grateful members of the galactic community. Zealeth's ship, the Harmony's Voice, was part of a small exploration fleet. They had 3 other vessels with them, each carrying different specialists. Dr. Kethrel, a scientist from the peaceful Zenthari species, would study the new aliens' biology. Engineer Voxtar would examine their technology and decide what improvements to offer them. Diplomat Cesara would handle the actual negotiations. "Sir," called out the sensor operator, "I'm getting some strange readings from the outer part of this system." Zealeth looked up from his reports. "What kind of strange readings?" "There's something big moving out there past the 7th planet. Really big, but the signature doesn't match anything in our database." Kava moved to check the sensors herself. Her 4 hands danced across the control panel. "He's right, Commander. There's definitely something massive in the outer system." It's huge." "How huge?" Zealeth asked. He was starting to feel worried. "The mass readings suggest it's at least 10 kilometers long. Maybe more, but that can't be right. A level 3 species shouldn't be able to build anything that big." Zealeth stood up from his chair. In all his years of exploration, he had never seen a primitive species with ships larger than a few hundred meters. The biggest ship in his own fleet was only 2 kilometers long, and it was considered one of the Council's finest vessels. "Could it be a space station?" he asked. "Maybe they built something in their outer system for mining or research." Dr. Kethrel's voice came over the communication system from her ship. "Commander, I've been analyzing the energy patterns from that object. It's not just big. It's putting out power readings that are off the charts. A level 3 civilization shouldn't have power sources that strong." Zealeth felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Something was wrong here. Very wrong. "All ships change course toward the outer system," he ordered. "But keep your distance. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close." The fleet turned away from the beautiful blue planet and headed toward the unknown object. As they got closer, the sensor readings became even more confusing. The object was definitely artificial, but it was unlike anything in the Council's records. "Commander," the sensor operator said, his voice shaking slightly. "The computer is having trouble processing the scan data. Whatever that thing is, it's interfering with our sensors just by existing." Zealeth gripped the arms of his chair. In 30 years of service, he had never encountered anything that could disrupt Council sensors simply by being nearby. Even the most advanced Council ships didn't have that kind of passive interference. "Sir, we're getting a response from the planet," Lieutenant Kava announced. "They've detected our probe and they're sending a message." "Put it on screen," Zealeth said, grateful for the distraction. The main display showed a primitive-looking spacecraft approaching their probe. It was small and blocky, clearly built by a species just learning to travel in space. A voice came through the speakers, speaking in a simple mathematical code that the Council's computers could easily translate. Unknown visitors, this is Earth Defense Command. We have detected your probe and wish to establish peaceful contact. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Zealith relaxed slightly. This was exactly what he expected from a level 3 species. They were scared, but trying to be diplomatic. Earth must be what they called their planet. Send the standard greeting, he told his communications officer. Tell them we are explorers from the Galactic Council and we come in peace. But even as he gave the order, Zealith couldn't stop thinking about the massive object in the outer system. He had a growing feeling that this first contact mission was going to be very different from all the others. Commander, Dr. Kethril called again. I'm reading more energy spikes from that object. It's moving. And it's moving toward us. Zealith's blood went cold. If the massive object belonged to these Earth creatures, then they were not a level 3 civilization at all. They were something else entirely. How fast is it moving? He asked. Faster than any of our ships, came the reply. Much faster. Zealith looked at the peaceful blue planet on his screen, then at the sensor readings showing the approaching giant. For the first time in his career, he wondered if the Council had made a terrible mistake. The standard first contact protocols suddenly seemed very inadequate. Whatever the humans of Earth had built in their outer system, it was beyond anything the Council had ever encountered. And it was coming their way. All ships prepare for possible evasive maneuvers, Zealith ordered. And someone get me a direct line to Council headquarters. I think we're going to need backup. As he waited for the communication link to connect, Zealith stared at the growing energy signature on his sensors. The object was still hours away, but already its presence was affecting their instruments. Whatever the humans had created, it was changing everything he thought he knew about primitive civilizations. The probe continued its journey toward Earth, carrying the Council's message of peace. But Zealith was no longer sure who should be more worried about this first contact, the humans or the Galactic Council itself. Captain Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm started blaring throughout the UES Sovereign's Wrath. She set down her cup and pressed the communication button on her desk. Bridge. Report, she said calmly. Captain, we have unknown contacts in the inner system, came the voice of Commander Rodriguez, her first officer. 4 vessels, completely unknown design. They're approaching Earth. Sarah stood up and walked quickly toward the bridge. The Sovereign's Wrath was so big that it took her several minutes to reach the command center, even using the high-speed transport tubes. The ship was 15 kilometers long and housed 50,000 crew members. It was humanity's pride and joy, one of 12 Titan-class vessels that protected human space. When Sarah reached the bridge, she could see the massive holographic display showing the solar system. 4 small dots were moving slowly toward Earth, while a larger dot representing her ship was positioned near Pluto. Atlas, give me a full scan of those vessels, Sarah ordered. The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately in its calm computer voice. Scanning complete, Captain. The vessels appear to be using fusion power and basic propulsion systems. Their technology level suggests they are approximately 200 to 300 years behind current human standards. Sarah raised an eyebrow. They're that primitive? Then how did they get here? Unknown, Captain. However, they are transmitting what appears to be a first contact message toward Earth. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and worry. Humanity had been exploring space for over a century, visiting dozens of star systems. They had found the ruins of ancient civilizations, but never any living aliens. Earth scientists had begun to think humans might be alone in the galaxy. What's Earth's response? Sarah asked. Earth Defense Command has sent a diplomatic probe to meet the aliens, Atlas replied. They are following standard first contact protocols. Sarah nodded. Earth had procedures for this situation, even though they had never been used before, but something bothered her about the alien ships. If they were so primitive, how had they traveled between stars? Commander Rodriguez, set course for the inner system, Sarah ordered. Best speed, but keep us far enough away to avoid interfering with the first contact. Aye, Captain. Estimated travel time is 6 hours at current speed. The Sovereign's Wrath began to move. Even though it was incredibly massive, the ship could travel faster than anything the aliens had ever built. Its fusion engines were just one part of its advanced design. The ship also had quantum torpedoes that could destroy entire cities. railguns that could crack open moons, and defensive shields that could bend space and time. Sarah had been captain of the Sovereign's Wrath for 5 years. The ship had been built during humanity's expansion period, when they expected to find hostile alien empires among the stars. Instead, they found empty systems and ancient ruins. The Titan-class ships had become explorers and peacekeepers rather than weapons of war. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Park from the sensor station, "I'm getting some interesting readings from the alien ships." "What kind of readings?" "Their sensors are very active. It looks like they're trying to scan us, but their equipment isn't advanced enough to get clear data." Sarah smiled. "They probably can't figure out what we are." "Atlas, what would our ship look like to their sensors?" "To their technology, Captain. The Sovereign's Wrath would appear as a massive object with confusing energy readings. Their computers would likely struggle to classify us as artificial rather than natural." "Interesting. They've probably never seen anything this big that wasn't a planet or a moon." As the hours passed, Sarah watched the situation develop. The alien probe had reached Earth and was exchanging messages with human diplomats. Everything seemed peaceful so far. The aliens claimed to be from something called the Galactic Council, and they wanted to welcome humanity to the galactic community. "Captain," Commander Rodriguez said, "we're receiving a message from Earth Command. They want us to participate in the first contact communications." Sarah considered this. The Sovereign's Wrath was equipped with the most advanced communication systems in human space. If humanity was going to talk to aliens for the first time, they might as well use their best equipment. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," Sarah ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves properly." The communication officer worked at her station for several minutes. "Channel open, Captain. We're broadcasting on multiple frequencies to make sure they can receive us." Sarah stood up and straightened her uniform. This was a historic moment. "Alien vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Sovereign's Wrath. We welcome you to our solar system and hope for peaceful relations between our peoples." The response came back quickly, but it was filled with static and interference. The alien communication systems were struggling to handle the Sovereign's Wrath's powerful transmitters. "Human vessel, this is Commander Zelith of the Galactic Council Ship Harmony's voice. We are having difficulty understanding your transmission. Your communication system appears to be very advanced." Sarah looked at her communications officer, who shrugged. "Captain, our standard transmitters are probably overwhelming their receivers. It would be like using a spotlight to signal someone who's only used to candlelight. Can you reduce our signal strength?" "Already did, Captain. This is as low as our systems will go." Sarah shook her head. She was starting to understand why the aliens seemed confused. To them, the Sovereign's Wrath probably looked like a mountain that could talk. "Commander Zelith, we apologize for the communication difficulties. Our ship is equipped with long-range exploration gear, so our signals might be stronger than you're used to. Are you able to receive this transmission clearly?" There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. "Yes, Captain Chen, we can hear you now. May I ask, how large is your vessel? Our sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings." Sarah looked at Atlas's holographic avatar, which appeared as a glowing blue figure on the bridge. The AI nodded slightly, indicating that it was safe to answer the question. "The Sovereign's Wrath is 15 kilometers in length," Sarah replied. "She's a Titan-class exploration and defense vessel." The silence that followed lasted so long that Sarah wondered if the communication link had been broken. Finally, Commander Zelith's voice came back, sounding very different than before. "Did you say 15 kilometers? "That's correct, Commander." Another long pause. Then, "Captain Chen, forgive me, but according to our records, your species should only be capable of building vessels a few hundred meters long at most." How is such a large ship possible? Sarah realized she was probably about to give the alien commander a very big surprise. "Commander Zelith, humanity has been building ships like this for over 50 years. The Sovereign's Wrath is actually one of our smaller deep space vessels." The communication channel went completely silent. "Atlas," Sarah said quietly, "I think we may have just broken their understanding of what humans are capable of." "Indeed, Captain. Based on their reaction, I believe the Galactic Council may need to revise their assessment of human civilization." Commander Zelith stared at his communication panel in complete shock. 15 kilometers. The human ship was 15 kilometers long. His own vessel, the pride of the Valerian fleet, was only 2 kilometers from bow to stern. "Sir," Lieutenant Kava whispered, "they said it was one of their smaller ships." Zelith felt dizzy. Nothing in the Council's records suggested that the humans should be capable of building anything larger than a basic space station. Yet here was a single ship that dwarfed his entire fleet. "Commander," the communication officer said nervously, "the humans are trying to establish a cultural exchange. They want to share information about our civilizations." Zelith nodded weakly. Perhaps this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe the humans were exaggerating about their capabilities. The Council had dealt with species that liked to boast before. "Put them through," he said. Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again. "Commander Zelith, we understand this is first contact for both our species. We'd like to share some basic information about humanity and learn about your Galactic Council." "Of course, Captain Chen," Zelith replied, trying to sound confident. "The Galactic Council represents 12 intelligent species across 47 star systems. We bring peace, technology, and knowledge to developing civilizations. We'd like to offer humanity membership in our community." There was a pause before Captain Chen responded. "That's very generous, Commander. We're always interested in meeting new neighbors. As a gesture of friendship, we'd like to share some star charts showing the systems we've explored." Zelith smiled. This was more like what he expected. Young civilizations always wanted to show off their tiny territories. "We'd be happy to see your local exploration, Captain." The data packet that arrived made Zelith's blood freeze. The human star charts showed mapped territories spanning 43 star systems. Not only that, but the charts included detailed information about planets, resources, and established colonies. The humans hadn't just explored these systems, they had settled them. Dr. Kethral's voice crackled over the communication system from her research ship. "Commander, these charts show exploration data that would take a Council fleet decades to gather. And look at the detail level. They've mapped everything down to individual asteroids." Zelith's hands shook as he studied the charts. The human territory was nearly as large as the entire Galactic Council's domain. But that was impossible. The Council had been expanding for over 2 centuries. "Captain Chen," Zelith said slowly, "these charts show extensive exploration. How long has humanity been traveling between stars?" "We've had interstellar capability for about 120 years, Captain Chen replied casually. "Though we only started serious colonization about 80 years ago." 80 years. The humans had built an interstellar civilization in 80 years. It had taken the Council over 2 centuries to achieve the same thing, and they'd had help from multiple species. "As a return gesture," Captain Chen continued, "we'd like to share some of our basic technology. Perhaps you might find it interesting." The technology packet that followed made Zelith's worst fears come true. The humans casually shared plans for matter converters that could turn raw elements into any material needed. They showed him quantum computers that could process information faster than the Council's best supercomputers. They included schematics for artificial gravity, generators that were smaller, and more efficient than anything the Council had ever built. Each piece of technology was described as basic or standard by the humans. Engineer Voxtar's panicked voice came through the speakers. "Commander, this technology is impossible. The matter converters alone represent scientific principles that our best researchers have only theorized about. And they're calling it basic equipment." Zelith's communication officer was pale with shock. "Sir, I'm analyzing their transmission methods." "The humans are using quantum entanglement for instant communication across space. The Council's fastest messages still take days to travel between systems." Dr. Kethral's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, I've been studying their ship's energy signature. The power output from their engines matches what we'd expect from a small star. A single human ship has more energy available than our entire fleet combined." Zelith closed his eyes and tried to think. Everything he knew about galactic civilization was crumbling around him. The Council prided itself on being the most advanced group of species in the galaxy. They offered membership to primitive worlds as a generous gift, bringing them technology and knowledge that would advance them by centuries. But the humans weren't primitive. They were more advanced than the Council in every measurable way. "Captain Chen," Zelith said, his voice cracking slightly, "your technology is very impressive. But I must ask, you said the Sovereign's Wrath was one of your smaller ships. What exactly do you consider a large ship?" "Well," Captain Chen replied thoughtfully, "the Titan-class ships like mine are mid-range vessels. We use them for long-range exploration and system defense. Our largest ships are the Colossus-class vessels, which are about 30 kilometers long. But we only have 3 of those. They're mainly used for deep space construction projects. 30 kilometers. Zelith felt like he might faint. And how many ships does humanity have in total? He asked weakly. Let me check with Fleet Command, Captain Chen said. Atlas, current human fleet numbers? A new voice responded, clearly artificial but more sophisticated than any AI the Council had ever created. Current active fleet consists of 437 vessels of destroyer class or larger, Captain. This includes 12 Titan-class ships, 46 battleships, and 3 Colossus-class vessels. Zelith's fleet consisted of 4 ships. The entire Council Navy had maybe 200 vessels total across all 12 species. The humans had more than twice that number in a single fleet. Captain Chen, Zelith said, his voice barely above a whisper. What was the purpose of your ship being in this system? Standard patrol duty, Captain Chen replied. We rotate our Titan-class ships through different systems to keep an eye on things. The Sovereign's Wrath was just finishing a routine sweep of our outer territories when you arrived. Routine patrol. The humans used 15-kilometer warships for routine patrol duty. Diplomat Cesara's voice came through the communication system, and she sounded just as shaken as Zelith felt. Commander, I think we need to completely revise our first contact protocols. We're not dealing with a developing civilization here. Zelith looked at his display showing the human ship. It hung in space like a metal mountain, its weapon systems alone probably capable of destroying his entire fleet. And there were 11 more just like it, plus hundreds of smaller ships that would still dwarf anything the Council had built. Captain Chen, Zelith said finally, I think there may have been some confusion about our respective civilizations. The Galactic Council would be very interested in learning more about humanity. Would it be possible to arrange a formal diplomatic meeting? Of course, Commander, Captain Chen replied cheerfully. We'd be happy to host your fleet at Earth. I can escort you there if you'd like. As Zelith gave the order to follow the human ship, he realized that this first contact had changed everything. The Council wasn't welcoming humanity into galactic civilization. Humanity was welcoming the Council into their territory. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 200-year history. Representatives from 12 species filled the great chamber on the Council homeworld. But instead of the usual calm discussions, chaos ruled the room. High Counselor Thane, a tall reptilian being from the Draconis Empire, slammed his staff against the floor repeatedly. Order, order in the chamber! He shouted, but his voice was drowned out by panicked arguments from every direction. This is impossible, screamed Representative Quintal from the Nexus Collective. Her multiple eyes were flashing different colors in distress. No species develops this fast. It violates every known law of technological advancement. Ambassador Veltar of the peaceful Xanthari species was trying to calm everyone down. Perhaps we should focus on peaceful contact. The humans seem friendly enough. Friendly? Roared General Crix from the militant Valerian Empire. They have ships that could destroy entire planets. One of their patrol vessels could wipe out our entire home fleet. The pandemonium had started 6 hours ago, when Commander Zelith's emergency report reached Council headquarters. The message had been simple but terrifying. Humanity was not a Level 3 civilization. They were something far beyond anything the Council had ever encountered. High Counselor Thane finally managed to restore some order. We will address this crisis systematically, he announced. Dr. Yethron, give us your analysis of the human technology. Dr. Yethron, the Council's chief scientist, approached the central podium. His tentacles trembled as he activated the holographic display. Honored Council members, I have reviewed all data from Commander Zelith's encounter. The conclusions are disturbing. The hologram showed a comparison between Council technology and what the humans had casually shared. Their matter conversion technology is at least 3 centuries beyond our current capabilities. Their quantum computers process information 10,000 times faster than our best systems, and their power generation methods. He paused, his skin changing to a pale color. Their single ship generates more energy than our entire civilization uses in a year. Representative Salex from the Hegemony of Worlds stood up angrily. How is this possible? Our scouts surveyed that system only 50 years ago. They found a primitive species that had barely achieved spaceflight. That's exactly the problem, Dr. Yethron replied. In 50 years, Humanity has advanced from basic rockets to technology that surpasses our finest achievements. They're developing at a rate that should be impossible. Military advisor Torkin, a massive armored being from the Fortress worlds, brought up the tactical display. The strategic implications are terrifying. This single human ship, the Sovereign's Wrath, has enough firepower to engage our entire battle fleet, and they said it was one of 12 identical vessels. 12, whispered Ambassador Veltar. 12 ships, each one capable of destroying everything we've built. It gets worse, Torkun continued grimly. They mentioned larger ships, 30-kilometer vessels they use for construction projects, and their total fleet numbers over 400 ships. The chamber fell silent as the reality sank in. The entire Council Navy consisted of perhaps 200 vessels spread across 47 systems. The humans had more than twice that number, and each of their ships was vastly superior to anything the Council had built. Representative Mossara from the Science Consortium was studying data on her personal display. There's something else disturbing here. Look at their star charts. The hologram changed to show human territorial maps. Red dots marked human colonies and exploration zones, stretching across dozens of star systems. They've been expanding for 80 years, Mossara continued. But look at the pattern. They've been moving outward from their home system in every direction. They should have encountered us decades ago. High Counselor Thane stared at the map. Are you saying they knew about us and chose not to make contact? It's possible, Mossara replied. Their exploration routes passed through systems less than 5 light-years from our outer territories. Ships with their sensor capabilities would definitely have detected our presence. The implications hit everyone at once. The humans hadn't stumbled upon the Council by accident. They had known about the galactic civilization for decades and had chosen to ignore it. General Crix's battle scars glowed red with anger. They've been watching us, studying us. They probably know everything about our military capabilities while we know nothing about theirs. Or, said Ambassador Veltar quietly, they simply didn't consider us important enough to contact. The chamber erupted in arguments again. Some representatives called for immediate military action. Others demanded diplomatic solutions. A few suggested hiding and hoping the humans would leave them alone. Dr. Yethron raised his tentacles for attention. There's one more thing. I've been analyzing the human ship's passive emissions. The energy patterns match theoretical descriptions of precursor technology. The chamber went dead silent. Every species in the Council knew about the precursors, the ancient civilization that had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind artifacts that the Council could barely understand, much less duplicate. You're suggesting the humans have precursor-level technology? High Counselor Thane asked. I'm suggesting the humans are precursor-level technology, Dr. Yethron replied. Everything we've seen suggests they've reached or exceeded the theoretical capabilities of the ancients. Representative Quintal's eyes were flashing pure white with terror. The precursors disappeared for a reason. What if they destroyed themselves with their own technology? What if the humans are heading down the same path? What if they don't? General Crix countered. What if they decide we're a threat to their expansion? Ambassador Veltar stood up slowly. I think we're missing the most important point here. The humans haven't attacked us. In fact, Captain Chen seemed genuinely friendly. She offered to escort Commander Zelith's fleet to Earth for formal diplomatic talks. That could be a trap, General Crix growled. With their technology, they don't need traps. Veltar replied. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. High Counselor Thane looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of representatives from 12 worlds. The Galactic Council had always been the dominant power in their part of the galaxy. They offered membership to primitive species as a generous gift, bringing them into a civilization they could never have achieved on their own. Now they faced a species that made them look primitive. What are our options? Thane asked quietly. Military advisor Torkin consulted his tactical computers. Military resistance is pointless. They could destroy our entire civilization without suffering meaningful casualties. Representative Mossara checked her diplomatic databases. We could try to establish ourselves as equals, but their technology makes that impossible. We have nothing to offer them that they don't already have. We could hide, suggested Representative Quintal, avoid their territory and hope they ignore us. For how long? General Crix demanded. They're still expanding. Eventually they'll claim every system in the galaxy. Ambassador Veltar cleared her throat. There is one other option. We could ask to join them. The chamber exploded in outraged voices. Join them? We are the Galactic Council. We don't bow to anyone. But High Counselor Thane was thinking. The Council had always survived by adapting to new situations. When they encountered more advanced species, they learned from them. When they found primitive ones, they helped them develop. The humans weren't more advanced, they were incomprehensibly advanced. The normal rules no longer applied. Ambassador Veltar may be right, Thane said slowly. We have 3 choices: fight and die, hide and eventually be found, or join them and survive. He looked around the chamber one more time. All in favor of offering council membership to humanity? Not a single hand was raised. All in favor of requesting human membership for the council? Every hand in the chamber went up. For the first time in galactic history, the Galactic Council had voted to ask for permission to join someone else's civilization. The journey to Earth took 3 days, and every hour brought new shocks to Commander Zealoth's fleet. The Sovereign's wrath moved through space like a moving city, its massive bulk somehow traveling faster than the Council's fastest ships. But it wasn't just the speed that amazed the aliens, it was everything they saw along the way. Commander, Dr. Kethrel reported from her science vessel, I'm detecting artificial structures around the 4th planet, massive orbital platforms and what appears to be industrial facilities. Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system cheerfully. Oh, that's just Mars. We terraformed it about 60 years ago. The orbital facilities handle most of our heavy manufacturing now. Terraformed. The humans had completely changed the atmosphere and surface of an entire planet as a casual construction project. As they continued toward Earth, Lieutenant Kava called out more impossible sights. Sir, there are hundreds of ships moving through this system. Most of them are larger than our flagship. Those are just cargo vessels and civilian transports, Captain Chen explained. The actual defense fleet is stationed further out. Defense fleet. Zealoth realized that everything they'd seen so far was just civilian infrastructure. The humans' military forces were somewhere else entirely. When Earth finally came into view, the Council representatives stood in stunned silence. The planet was surrounded by a ring of space stations, each one larger than the biggest Council facility. Thousands of ships moved between the stations in carefully organized traffic patterns. The entire system hummed with activity that dwarfed anything the Council had ever achieved. Welcome to Earth, Captain Chen announced. Home to 12 billion humans and the capital of our republic. 12 billion. The entire Council represented only 8 billion beings across 12 different worlds. Admiral Harrison met them at the main orbital station above Earth. He was an older human with gray hair and kind eyes. But Zealoth couldn't forget that this friendly man commanded the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Welcome to our system, Admiral Harrison said warmly. We're honored to meet representatives of the Galactic Council. We've been hoping to find other intelligent species for decades. The meeting took place in the United Nations building on Earth's surface. Zealoth found himself sitting across from human diplomats in the same chamber where humanity governed itself. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had come here expecting to offer these primitives membership in galactic civilization. Instead, he was hoping they would let the Council survive. We appreciate your hospitality. Zealoth began carefully. The Galactic Council has come to revise our initial assessment of humanity. Admiral Harrison smiled. We understand there may have been some confusion about our development level. It happens more often than you'd think. More often? Zealoth asked. Well, this is our first contact with living aliens, Harrison explained, but we found ruins of several extinct civilizations during our exploration. Most of them seem to have reached a certain technological level and then stopped advancing. We've always wondered why. Dr. Kethrel spoke up nervously. Perhaps they reached a stable point in their development and saw no need to advance further. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. That's possible, though from what we've learned about your council, you seem to have maintained steady progress. That's impressive. Zealoth felt a strange mix of pride and terror. The humans were complimenting the Council's achievements while casually mentioning that they'd explored enough of the galaxy to find multiple extinct civilizations. Admiral, Zealoth said slowly, the Council has a proposition for humanity. We're listening. Zealoth took a deep breath. This went against everything the Council stood for, but survival was more important than pride. The Galactic Council would like to formally request membership in human civilization. Admiral Harrison blinked in surprise. I think there may be some misunderstanding. We were hoping to apply for membership in your organization. The room fell silent. Zealith stared at the human admiral in confusion. You want to join the council? Of course, Harrison replied. You represent 12 different species across dozens of systems. That's exactly the kind of galactic community we've been hoping to find. We'd be honored to contribute to such an alliance. Zealith felt like his brain was breaking. Admiral, with respect, humanity has technology centuries beyond anything the Council possesses. Your single ship could destroy our entire fleet. Why would you want to join us? Harrison leaned forward with genuine interest. Commander, technology isn't everything. What you've built is impressive. A peaceful alliance between multiple species lasting for over 2 centuries. That kind of diplomatic achievement is far more valuable than any weapon. But you could simply take control, Zealith protested. You have the power to rule the galaxy if you wanted. Why would we want to rule anyone? Harrison asked, looking genuinely puzzled. That sounds like a lot of work and not much fun. We'd much rather be partners. Dr. Kethrall was frantically taking notes. Admiral, if humanity joins the Council, what would you bring to the Alliance? Harrison consulted a tablet. Well, we could share some of our exploration data. We've mapped about 200 systems so far, though I'm sure some of that overlaps with your territory. We could also help with any engineering projects you might have. And of course, our defense fleet could help protect Council worlds if needed. 200 systems. The humans had explored 5 times more territory than the Council, and they were offering to share it freely. What would humanity want in return? Zealith asked suspiciously. Mainly friendship, Harrison replied simply. We've been alone in the galaxy for over a century. It gets lonely out here. Having neighbors would be wonderful. Ambassador Veltar, who had been quiet during the discussion, finally spoke up. Admiral, you could have contacted us decades ago. Our territories have been close to yours for years. Why wait until now? Harrison looked slightly embarrassed. Well, we knew you were there, but we weren't sure you wanted visitors. Some species prefer to be left alone. We were planning to make contact eventually, but we wanted to be respectful of your boundaries. Respectful. The most powerful species in the galaxy had been politely waiting for permission to say hello. The negotiations continued for several hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as its 13th member. In exchange, they would share their technology, their star charts, and their protection with the other species. But everyone in the room understood the reality. The Council wasn't gaining a new member. It was being absorbed into a human empire that was too polite to call itself an empire. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Harrison walked Zealith to the observation deck overlooking Earth. The planet sparkled below them, surrounded by the impossible infrastructure of human civilization. Commander, Harrison said quietly, I want you to know that humanity genuinely values what the Council has built. We've seen the ruins of civilizations that grew powerful and then destroyed themselves. The fact that 12 species have worked together peacefully for 2 centuries proves that intelligence and wisdom can coexist with power. Zealith looked up at the human admiral. What happens now? Now we learn from each other, Harrison replied. Your people have centuries of experience in diplomacy and cooperation. That's knowledge we desperately need. In return, we can share our technology and help protect the peace you've built. As Zealith watched the lights of human civilization twinkling below, he realized something important had happened here. The Galaxy Council hadn't been conquered or destroyed. They had been invited to join something larger than themselves. The humans had the power to rule the galaxy through force, but instead they chose to rule through friendship. It was, Zealith thought, perhaps the most advanced technology of all. 3 months later, the first Joint Council human exploration fleet departed for the galaxy's outer rim. The fleet consisted of 20 human ships and 50 Council vessels, working together to map new territories and search for other intelligent species. The galaxy had new guardians now, and they carried both the wisdom of the Council and the strength of humanity. Whatever challenges lay ahead in the vast darkness between the stars, they would face them together. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun.